Chris Yandeck, C1 Review covering Las Vegas and the world today. We'll have a compelling discussion with two remarkable individuals. First, we welcome back to C1 Review Sean Callagy. Mr. Callagy is the Chief Visionary Officer and co-founder of Unblinded. Additionally, he runs his own law firm, Callagy Law. He is an international speaker who has worked with various Fortune 500 companies. Also, Sean is the founder of his own charitable organization, the Callagy Christian Foundation. Sean, thanks for joining us again on C1 Review.
Hey, Chris, thank you so much. It's an honor to be back and appreciate being here with the legendary man you're about to introduce.
We're glad to have you here. And also joining us today is that legendary man for this discussion on C1 Review is C1 Review sponsor Rob Gill, the founder of Epic Financial Strategies LLC, the author of the forthcoming book Surviving Success, and a man who has his own youth basketball league, Epic Elite AAU. Rob, thanks for joining us again on C1 Review. How are you, sir?
Chris, thank you. And there's two legends on this call right now, and I'm not one of them. But let me just add one other thing to Sean. He is one of two top 100 attorneys in 2014 and 16 with an underdog client to get verdicts that were in the 27 to $33 million area, and has done so by using a formula that he's trained me in. I have two of the greatest trainers in my life. One being Jay Billson, the other one being Sean Callagy. And this is a gift for me to be on this call and have this interview right now, because for all your folks that are about to hear what Sean has to say, the multiple books he's written and the path he's on is going to be an incredible gift. And I hope people could take notes and really pay attention, because it's going to be a fun ride.
Well, I'm honored to be here with both of you today. But let's just begin like we do with all of these. Rob, how did you meet Sean?
So I met Sean. I went to an event in New Jersey. It was Rooney's Crab House. It was a restaurant on the Jersey Shore shortly after I had gone to a Tony Robbins event looking for more. And when I say Tony Robbins, not to jump up and down, but to learn the science of mindset, which is what he really taught about neuroassociative conditioning for the 4 days that I seen him, 2 of the 4 days. And a month later, I was back to where I was because I didn't take any of the action steps. And someone invited me, a chiropractor invited me to a dinner to see a gentleman who happens to be an attorney speak. I was not fond of attorneys, so I really wasn't interested in going, and I was late about 25 minutes. But when I got there, he was being introduced by one of his clients who he did get a verdict for. And hearing when Sean grabbed the microphone, what was so amazing was I heard Tony Robbins. Now, Chris, my background in basketball, my relationship with the Hurleys, as does Sean. And I often speak about that September 2017 night where I felt I was in the presence of greatness. I didn't feel like it was the quote unquote next Tony Robbins. I felt like it was the next thing, right? So there's no other Tony Robbins. There's no other Jim Rome. There's no other Brad Lee. There's no other Ed Bylett. There's the next one. And I felt like I was in the presence of that. And I immediately beelined to Sean. And fun fact for everybody watching, Sean is legally blind. He told me that night. For the next 6 months, as I tried to set up my next meeting, I, for whatever reason, deleted that in my mind and didn't realize that he wasn't reading the 900, I'm joking, text messages that I had sent him and emails. But he had a wonderful team around him at Callagy Law at that point who was filling him in on what I was saying. And, the rest is history and the versions that we like to tell.
Sean, what did you think about Rob when you first met him?
I thought Rob was an interesting man. Candidly, I saw a tremendous amount of knowingness. I have very precise language, a lot of knowingness, a lot of ego. Yeah, I know. And I saw somebody with a huge heart. I saw somebody who clearly was committed to causing something, and somebody that had a gap meaningfully present for him between where he was and where he wanted to go. And we had common dynamics and background. And I was like, I just like this guy. I liked him a lot. And I really did. Certain things were like, but I liked him to the core.
So let me just ask you, Sean, you're sitting behind a word, obviously Unblinded. Tell us about how you have helped other people achieve their dreams and what Unblinded is about.
Yeah. As succinctly as possible. And this is like a big statement. 1, everybody says they want to change the world. 2, the question is how. And this is what I was super up for. So I had a peak performance background, high school athletics, Division I college baseball player at Columbia University, 4-year starter, going blind, And I realized that the same dynamics of sport, same dynamics of how you mow a lawn and business, like what if, as Einstein said, we could make all of that as simple as possible, not simpler. 1997, I looked to transition my athletic knowledge after quitting my job at a giant law firm, going blind, $100,000 in debt, and a massive panic into a mechanism so I could not go blind and be broke. So Unblinded was created out of necessity because I started reading some of the great books of personal development, of business development, and they were not giving me a formula. They were giving me ideas. They were giving me quasi disconnected, unrelated tips, maybe sometimes overlapping. And with my sports background, baseball, football, and wrestling, I knew that if I knew only a portion of how to hit or a portion of how to do a takedown or wrestle, you just don't win. So I wanted to create a business mechanism and format that sounded something incredibly different than be nice to people, work really hard, be a good person, then it all works out. You'll find a way. None of that was how I played baseball, football, or wrestled. There was a specific scientific approach that was heart-driven, that was passionate. And so in 1997, I set out to distill principles into one formula, and that's what the Callagy results formula was created to be, which would later be renamed the Unblinded formula, seeing what you don't see. And I said, before I tell anybody about this, I'm going to prove it works. Because a lot of people out there get, coaching certificate in a box. I'm not being dismissive or condescending. And they're like, oh, I can go out and coach people. And I believe there's a distinction, Chris, between three things. Consulting, which is telling people what to do. Training, which is wax on, wax off. So Mr. Miyagi consulted Daniel-san. He waxed off, waxed on, trained Daniel-san. Then he coached him into his heart to continue to do the thing. So consulting, training, coaching, those three things, when done optimally, lead to actualization. In business, you have to cause yes, as you know, Chris, and the great G. Bilstein and Rob Gill know, you have to cause yes. But then the question becomes, which yeses do you cause to create exponential acceleration and scaling? And then how emotional do you get yourself to do it? That's what I distilled it all into. That's the Unblinded formula. And we have supported people, thousands and thousands of people, coaches, trainers, lawyers, giant corporate environments, Disney, T-Mobile, Salesforce, executive leaders, athletes, celebrities, people from every walk of life, every licensed profession, doctors, chiropractors that you could think of in this space with vertical specificity and tremendous acceleration. Sounds like a big statement, but the idea is everybody wants that. Everybody wants to know, how do you create more? How do you give that to other people? So when I'm dead, I'm not forgotten. Whether I go to my higher power or I don't believe in a higher power, I happen to believe in a higher power, but if you don't believe in a higher power, nobody wants to be forgotten, and they all want to grow and teach others to do the same so they're not forgotten. And that's, in a nutshell, what this is all about.
Sean, is there a basis in what you do in Unblinded and things like Ericksonian hypnosis, NLP, or other existing methods of self-improvement?
100%. So, if you have, like, the BlackBerry gave insight to the iPhone. And before the BlackBerry, if you go all the way back, there were smoke signals. So there's a mechanism and process of it all. So Ericksonian hypnosis, NLP, I'm masterfully understanding of these dynamics. I found limitations. I found holes. I found gaps. Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within, unbelievable work. But what is your self-mastery, which I'll encapsulate Tony's work at, pointed at in business? Like, what do you point the self-mastery at? How do you cause yes? So my work has been inspired by Tony Robbins, my high school athletic coaches, my grandparents, my uncle, my parents, every coach I've ever played for, what to do and not do in athletics, Jay Abraham, Jerry Spence, How to Argue and Win Every Time, How to Make a Fortune from Public Speaking by the amazing Robert Anthony, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is not a formula, disconnected tips, but has interesting relevance, and many others. But those are some of the core works that have driven forward the creation of this work.
Makes sense. Over the years, Sean, we've had many prominent attorneys on CY Interview, including the late Vincent Bugliosi, who, as you know, had that great mock trial of Jerry Spence. years
Sure.
ago. And of course, obviously, Gloria Allred and Roy Black, who also are very prominent attorneys and have been out there for many years. So, when I hear Jerry Spence, I think of these past guests that are on C1 Interview. Always enjoy hearing from legal minds. But Rob, let me just ask you.
Ask Chris this one thing. And Vincent Bugliosi, I think prosecuted Manson, and I think
that is correct.
In his book that when Manson looked at him, his watch stopped, and that's when he thought Manson actually was possessed by the devil. Back to you.
Wow, interesting. Never heard that one before. Rob, can you tell us what is something of great importance you have learned from Sean?
Oh, wow. If I say one thing, I'm going to leave a lot of other things out. So,
overview.
What I will say is the level of integrity, yet humility, and at the same time, a human that makes mistakes every day and is accountable to them. So the highest level of integrity, humility, and a human being when he makes mistakes, like all of us do, is accountable and apologetic for when those mistakes happen, if he does make mistakes. So what I'm describing is a person that puts his pants on one leg at a time, yet the standard that he lives by, I haven't seen before. The standard is off the charts, hard to, contemplate, but also as a human myself, and being away from it, not as connected as I was in 18, 19, 20, and 21, you have the human dynamics that kick in, and every day he's on his morning huddle, every day 6, 7, 8 a.m. he's coaching his internal team. Every night he's putting his daughter to sleep. He has his other three beautiful children that are all adults now, and then he has a daughter that's going to be 2, or is 2, going to be 3, 1.5, 2.5. Puts her to bed, reads her a story, and is up at 6 a.m. and coaching calls, internal team calls. And along that day, as people try and keep up with him, very challenging, there could be mistakes that are made, and he's accountable to them. But at the same time, is on a vision that, to me, even as I know him as personally as I do, it's incomprehensible. I really don't understand his global vision because I can't get it into my nervous system, although he describes it to me all the time.
So, Sean, can you speak a little bit about the integrity-based human influence, what it is, and how do you develop the ability to understand it and put it into use?
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. And Rob, just receive with immense gratitude, brother. I love you, and I'm very grateful.
Love you too, brother. Yep.
One pant leg at a time, perfectly imperfect. So integrity-based human influence, Chris and everyone, again, thanks so much for having us here, is all about
absolutely
very simply the principle of, 1, being transparent. Like, what's your intention? What would you like to do? What would you like to offer? 2nd, seeking to add more value than you're going to receive or take.
Yep.
And 3rd, the thing that you say can do something, can do that thing. Like, this mug is in integrity if it works to drink out of it. If you say that your accounting services work, it's because they help your business grow and pay taxes and collect your money and pay your payables. What you're saying actually works. That's the foundation of it. And then the question becomes, where do you apply that yes? And in growing business, we talk about the 8 yeses of business, from how you source client relationships to exponentially expand them, how you cause the yeses, how you recruit, how you manage, how you lead, all of those dynamics. But it's one simple mechanism. And the root of it, Chris, the root of it, everybody, is a big, big pill to swallow. It's unconditional love with masterful, healthy boundaries. It's unconditional love. I love people I've put in prison. Truth. I pray for them. I hope for the best. I hope they find a different way. I put Ponzi schemers like Scott Rothstein, who spent 45 years in prison. I was the first person to report him to the FBI. I've had the unfortunate reality of being in these situations, and every one of them, I never wish ill on anyone. Truth. I had to work to get there. I never wish ill on anyone. And from there, and only from there, do I believe you can actually create integrous influence. Because if it's conditional, if love for you is conditional, if respect for you is conditional, then you got a real challenge. Because when are those conditions met? Are you pretending to actually be kind and nice and loving when you're really not? Is it because the person's a celebrity or a billionaire or, a prominent attorney, accountant, financial service provider that you act nicely and then you ignore and give no presence to the worker in the hotel? Like, if so, I believe that unconsciously or consciously you're out of integrity. There's a distinction between unconditional love, unconditional respect, and trust. I don't trust anybody completely. Everybody is capable of lying. Everybody is capable of being deceptive. And I talk about 7 levels of trust, a whole mechanism I created recently, but it's still from Jump Street, every human on earth, from serial killer to Mother Teresa, unconditional love, unconditional respect, distinctions of trust, very different question, all driven into integrity-based human influence, where to apply it, and the emotional dynamic of how to cause it and bring it forward in the world, Chris.
I think that's a great absolute overview, and thanks for explaining that. And I was taking it as you were going along, and I was learning things. That's just phenomenal stuff, Rob. Rob, give us an update on Surviving Success.
It's not out yet. It's coming out soon, but I want to share something for the audience that could be listening as what everything Sean says pertaining to communication with somebody over the phone and one of the yeses. And that is on how to put yourself in a position with somebody to use one of the indispensable elements or some of the indispensable elements within his formula. I had learned from Robert Cialdini when I first met Sean. I talked about the 6 tools of influence, which, as Chris, is commitment and consistency, reciprocity, scarcity, liking, social proof, and authority, right? But when Sean, now that's great to know, but when Sean's formula, for anyone that's in sales that's watching this, the formula is so good on how to communicate with people that you don't know. Because if anyone here is ever going to hop on and listen to some of Sean's teachings, where he talks about how to build rapport, which was something that I was missing when I met Sean. I'm missing a lot of things, but that was the thing that I really quadrupled down on when I learned it. And it's the 5 questions of rapport building, where during this 5 questions, let's call it an hour. I'm just going to make up a time. If you're speaking 10 minutes or less and you're on the phone for an hour going through these 5 questions, you're doing a really good job of bringing someone forth to have their listening open for you to sell your product or service. And when I saw that, and then we had the good fortune of getting abundance of leads through another one of our partners' marketing system, it began to help create scale in what we did, right? And then it took me a while to kind of bounce off that and build other things. But it's so important. If anyone's in the insurance business that's listening right now, they go back to archaic sales trainings of the 1950s, right? If you're talking about Wall Street, there's always the mountain chart stuff that's shown, all the different technical things that are shown. But the thing that's missing the most is the rapport build at the highest level, if that's however you could get to your highest level. And the map of it and the questions of it is so powerful that if it's in the wrong hands, it could create some of the dark side of the things that Sean just mentioned. But with that being said, if it's in the right hands, your business, your personal life can flourish as a result of it in ways that you never thought possible. And
Sean, thoughts? And then I just want to ask you, what are your thoughts? I'm so excited for Rob's upcoming book, Surviving Success, and hearing his life story. I know you've heard bits and pieces of it, but what are your thoughts for the people who are going to finally get to learn who Rob Gill is?
Sean has a chapter that he put together. Just where do you see the whole thing, including Sean's part?
Yeah. So Chris, thank you. So the book is extraordinary. I had the privilege of writing the foreword, and I had the privilege of working through an ecosystem merging chapter. And it is something that for anyone who wants to figure out what everyone wants to figure out, which is how do you make more money? How do you keep the money you make? And literally in the financial dynamics, as well as not destroying yourself like so many people do. And you want to be entertained and understand a little bit more about the wild, woolly, amazing, and extraordinary Rob Gill. And I have a fun little piece in the forward where I say, Chris, will Rob Gill become a billionaire? Will Rob Gill implode? Will Rob Gill become a billionaire and implode? Let's stay tuned, because Rob Gill is a walking reality show. And I said, but so am I. And he's a character in my reality show, and I'm a character in his reality show, and we have the blessing and privilege of doing all of it. So you want to be entertained, learn how to expand your financial abundance, and keep it with some wild stories that, you know, don't quite get to like The Dirt by Motley Crue, but are certainly a long way away from the typical standardized, sanitized, corporatized personal development books you read. It is not that. So it's awesome, Chris.
I think it's going to be great, entertaining, and I look so forward to reading it. It's going to be Rob in his own everything. It's everything Rob, everything all the time. And who doesn't love Rob, Sean?
It's very true. I love Rob. And I say I love Rob, and sometimes I want to hug him, and sometimes I'll hit him with a lightning bolt in the head, and then I want to hug him, and I want to love him, and he will be, I hope, if he'll have me, we'll be best friends until the day we leave this mortal coil, as Rob Gill says.
Hey, that's from Jay Bilstein, Mortal Coil, Jay.
Is that right?
Yes, he's the one that talked about it from Hamlet. That's where I learned it. As you know, Sean, I never read Hamlet.
I thought you did, but okay.
Oh,
I got it.
no.
That's on the reading list next, I suppose. Maybe.
I don't think so.
Hey, Chris, can I say this about Rob? Can I say this about Rob?
Sure.
We joke, we tease, we have fun. And as you know, Chris, and as Jay knows, and folks out here may not know, Rob is from Bayonne, New Jersey. That's where Chuck Wepner of like Rocky fame came from, what the Rocky movie was made about.
Yep, of course.
And so we can so easily underestimate people. And Rob has done a beautiful job. Like, hey, I'm like Rob from Bayonne. Rob is one of the smartest, most sophisticated, most driven, most competitive, most relentless human beings you're ever going to find. And you don't ever see it coming. And he wants it just that way. Back to you.
Yes. You know, speaking of the...
There goes my Tracy. There goes my...
You know, Sean, speaking of the Rocky movies, we've had the late Burt Young, of course, who was Paulie, and Dolph Lundgren, who, of course, was Ivan Drago on in the Past and CY interview, talking about that when Rocky Balboa came out, when the Stallone movie franchise came back. So let me just ask you, Sean, Dale Carnegie said, smile and don't argue. Maxwell Maltz said, act as if you had to say something quick to inspire someone. What would you say?
I would say love everybody unconditionally with boundaries. And when people are in a heart-centered place, you want to be in matching that energy and under it. So people are in a kind, loving, open place. It's like feeding a deer with my 2-year-old daughter. Sit there, take a lower position, put your head down, your hand out to integriously have them know they're safe and let them be actually safe. Don't be a wolf in sheep's clothing now, right? And then when they're not, Dale Carnegie, I guarantee you, did not build a scaled enterprise at a massive level. The truth is he didn't. And I love him. I respect him. But you definitely, unquestionably, have to hold boundaries. And when people are dismissive, condescending, disrespectful, we teach people how to open listening. In a philanthropic environment where everybody wants to raise money for charity, in a courtroom with criminals or not, with a boardroom, corporate, small business, loving, kids, little league, all of it, you got to drop a lightning bolt on somebody's ass sometimes. And you got to open their listening. But the key is to never have it be ego-driven or emotionally reactive. It's simply a tool. Where somebody is condescending, dismissive, disrespectful, then you're going to match the energy plus a little bit. Not a lot of it, plus a little bit. They get a little bit louder, you get a little bit louder. You reopen listening, drop back into the heart. That's what I would say about that.
Rob, final thought.
No, hold on, because I know I'm just sitting here listening to Sean, and the amazing, he thinks all day when he's not working, but when he thinks, he defines a problem in solvable terms, always comes up with solutions, which is what you just heard. One of the most amazing things, and Chris, you may want to talk to Jay offline with Sean about this, he has created a model on how to raise money for foundations called sustainable giving, where it's not just people writing the check for the write-off. You know, there's more to it. And he's created something so unique that if the norm money raises, I'm just going to make up a number, 300, 400, 500 grand. Once again, it's tied to the formula, but he articulates it specific to this niche. The money he raises for charities is off the charts. I mean, I'll let him tell that. What he's done in the Tony Robbins world has been extraordinary. I witnessed it on stage, actually. Same thing with another person that we know and other people that I'm not even aware of, where he's created a model. Someone actually tried to steal it and use it themselves, and it worked once, but then it faded because there was an integrity behind it the way he does it. But the sustainable giving, where the person writing the check feels like they're getting more than just a write-off. because of the way Sean does it. And that's because he shows you how to create more value than just the money that the charity is receiving. Sean, if you want to because I think a lot of folks that are connected to the CY interview are in that financial stratosphere, and I think it's a good thing to talk about.
Yeah,
Sean, go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. So I had the privilege of thinking about one time, how do you actually, if we're always differentiating and looking for that in our products and services, how do you raise money for charity for a local child in town to cure a disease, to employ blind people? I'm a blind man. And what do you say? Hey, give money to charity because this cause is so sad and bad. Help blind people get jobs. And this is a great charity. I mean, that's true. But the people are thinking, well, what about curing breast cancer that my mom had? What about freeing kids from sex trafficking like I read about in this book? What about the animals and lion sanctuaries, right? So, yeah, but whatever, like, what if I have a dear friend who's massively interested in invasive plant species, right? So what do we do? Say that invasive plant species don't matter, but, bug saving does. So I sat back and thought about, like, how do you differentiate? And so point number one is obviously got to have a great cause. Second, it's got to be super efficient. But third, what's in it for the donor? What's in it for the donor?
And that's the real question that they have, right, Sean?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think that's why many people don't donate.
Exactly. So that's what we created. So I've had the privilege of shattering fundraising records all over the place. Tony Robbins' example, Tony Robbins' 60th birthday. They want to give him a surprise donation for ending sex trafficking. There was 400 entrepreneurs in the room, and they asked me, his brother-in-law, his beautiful wife, if I would raise the money on stage. I said I'd be happy to. I said, what would be a great outcome? They said $500,000. And I'd watched Tony at events, at his own events, before that, raise $450,000 in a room of thousands of people. And they were cheering and crying. It was unbelievable. So now I'm tasked with raising $500,000 in a room of 350 people, was I think the exact number.
Yep.
And I had the privilege of raising not only $500,000, but $1.7 million in 26 minutes.
That's right.
And through the concepts we're talking about. And then we took it on the road, a whole bunch of places. But one of our favorite stories was Rob and I, as I think you know, Chris, and maybe some of the fine folks here do, and I know Jay Bilstein knows, we went to the Ukraine. And after we came back from the Ukraine, we went to an event where the highest fundraise at this event was $14,000. And the guy's like, hey, I'd be thrilled if we could raise $200,000. I'm like, excuse me, sir, $200,000? You raised $14,000. Come on, dude. Right. And then we raised $2.6 million.
Yep.
And the next event, $1.8 million. Next event, $1.2 million, with half of the crowd returning and being cannibalized of not wealthy people in a room with 300 people. And
by the way, Sean, if I may add, not only did Sean do that, thank you. And Sean, hold that thought because it's important that people listen. Even if they didn't have that extraordinary wealth, what they got from the donation was the highest level of business training that they could ever get anywhere else in their life. Connective tissue proximity together, not just for one weekend, but continuously over time. Go ahead.
Yeah. So exactly. So you know how Chris and everybody, somebody might be like, oh, I get it. We can auction off an autographed picture of James Bond movies, and that would be great. It's wonderful. It's not sustainable. It's an item. It's like you're buying it, kind of, right?
Yep.
So you're donating, buying it, kind of, and it's like a tricky tray auction. But what if you could create the integrous value of what you're providing to people and show its ultimate sustainability? That's what we did, and it has worked unbelievably. And it could work with any charitable cause, provided the people in the charity are growth minded, as Dr. Dweck would say at Stanford, not fixed mindset, and they're actually driven for their cause to work as opposed to protect their positioning in the cause. And I'm not saying it sarcastically. I've seen that also over and over and over, where people are like, yes, come in and help us. But their true intention was to protect their own position, not to actually raise the money. So growth-minded, integrous folks equals winning. Bureaucracy, non-integrous people driven by ego and protection of the positioning equals losing. And back to you, Chris.
Yeah.
Simply amazing, Sean. Just a simply amazing story, an inspiring thing. And if that doesn't inspire anybody, nothing is going to inspire anybody, Rob.
Yeah, I agree. I have no other words other than I was happy to be part of this interview, and I knew I was just going to sit back and watch.
Well, I'm going to just leave you both with that. So for Sean Callagy and Rob Gill, thank you both for being on C Wine Review with me, and thank you so much, and please hang on with us. Thank you for watching today's C Wine Review segment from Las Vegas. Please hit the like button, and please hit the subscribe button to be updated on all future C Wine Review content from Las Vegas and beyond.